It's time now for County-Wide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's County-Wide.
Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to the program. It is County-Wide. Brad Miller with you today, and we're happy to welcome into our studio Barbara Uran. Barbara is the superintendent of the Cottonwood Oak Creek School District in the Verde Valley, and Dr. Paul Tighe, superintendent of Mingus Union High School, and your first year at Mingus.
Yes, thank you.
We say hello to you. Congratulations. Thanks for coming to our community.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here. Love it here.
Lifelong educator, but first year here at Mingus. And Barbara's been at Cottonwood Oak Creek for some time now.
Some time.
You were in the classroom, and you're
yes,
the superintendent, and so we appreciate the work that both of you do. And we're going to talk coming up on the election day is November 5th. This will be a mail-in ballot, and you'll be getting those here in another 3 weeks or so, mid-October the 14th, I guess, the mail-in ballots for those of you living in either or district for a budget override. And we're going to talk about that today, and we'll kind of find out what it is, what it isn't, what happens if it passes, why is the money needed, and what if not, if voters turn these decisions away. So that's what we'll get to, and our time is short, so that's what we'll do. Okay. When we start talking about this isn't the first override. Let's start with Cottonwood, Barbara.
Correct.
Has asked for, and so voters are going to start to become familiar with these issues. But when was the last time that we needed to do this, and why do we need to do it now?
Well, let's go back historically. For Cottonwood Oak Creek School District, the community has supported an override for the district since 1993. Okay. And an override is a mechanism that allows school districts to ask their communities to exceed their budgets. We cannot exceed a budget. We're given a certain amount per pupil, and that's our budget. That covers core programs, but a district can go out to their community and ask for up to 15% to exceed their maintenance and operation budget. The district, both Mingus and COCSD, did ask the community about 5 years ago for an override. That override is only good for 7 years, and it starts decreasing in that 5th year by a third, and then it's gone. So since 1993 for our district, since 1985 for Mingus Union High School.
Okay. That's correct. And so we, as Barbara said, our funding is established by the legislature, and so even though it's supported locally with property taxes, the only local control in that is really the opportunity to either pass bonds or overrides. And so our boards met together jointly over the summer and decided to ask the voters to continue these overrides that have been in place for a long time. So it's not a new tax, it's just a continuation of the great support we've already had for decades. Will
both these questions ask for the full 15%?
No.
Okay, where does that fall?
Both boards wanted to be at the same level, which is to continue the 10%, although we would have loved, to ask for a 15%. The board's feeling was that we're still, recovering from a pretty tough economic period, and that it would be too hard for the community at this time.
Okay, so there was that consideration.
Yeah, it was discussed jointly by the boards when they met together.
Let me, Paul, you bring up something interesting, and I want to share kind of with our listeners. Before we went on air, we chatted a little bit. There's been an awful lot of talk about shared services, and indeed there are some shared services between the two districts that are already correct?
That's correct.
In place. And we're going to do a whole show, maybe a couple, on just that. I think after we come through the override, so that we can further explain how that's evolving, what we can expect in the future. The consolidation issue, gosh, has been talked about in this valley since as long as I've been here. That's 20 years. So that's out there too, and it's kind of hard to separate that issue, especially like you say, both are looking at 10%. There's been those kinds of communications. So just for our listeners, I want to kind of put that out there, that's a discussion that's been happening for some time.
That's correct.
Between your respective boards, and that we'll have on our program to share with listeners and get a little bit further into that. In the time being, okay, I literally should have a devil's advocate hat. You're going to get, and I know you guys have been doing presentations to community meetings and things like that. Oh my gosh, here's this money. You've got enough, for heaven's sakes. Barbara, tighten your belt. Paul, you kidding me? You don't need this. Work within what you've got. The rest of us have to. To that,
and I think, if we just worked within what we had in 2008, we we might be able to, feel a little more comfortable about maybe we don't need an override. But, we looked back the last 5 or 6 years, and the unfortunate thing is Arizona's led the nation in cuts to education at 22% during that period. So, we've endured some very significant cuts. We added it up for Cottonwood, Oak Creek, it was over $6 million. For us, $3 million. And a lot of that goes for equipment, technology, textbooks, furniture, carpet, buses,
buildings.
A lot of capital type expenses. But 85 to 90% of our budget is people, salary and benefits, because that's what we do. We're a service provider.
Right.
And so we've already endured some very significant cuts. Arizona is just under 74% of the state average. So the national average on educational funding, we're at just under 74% of it.
So in the bigger picture, can we kick this problem at the state legislature and/or the governor and/or the folks down in the Capitol?
Well, the state really does have the responsibility of a general and uniform system of financing education. Communities do have the opportunity to support their local school districts and how they want to see their programs provided for students. In the general budget that we receive to operate our school districts, I would say the funding is enough to cover your core curriculum classes, your reading, your math, your social studies, your sciences. And even there, if you look at where we rate in the nation, we're 48th in the nation of funding. But we've done an outstanding job of providing those core pieces for our students. What happens, though, when we look at that full spectrum of education for students, those dollars are limited to offer the things, the hooks that keep students in school, and also those programs that research definitely supports in increasing achievement for students,
right.
IQ for students. So those are some of the programs, just a few of those programs that we're able to help fund with override dollars. I want to talk just a little bit when Paul was talking about the cuts that we've endured, and I think we've had this conversation with budgets before, with what the states and districts have gone through the years. But we have so eliminated so many positions, full supportive programs to avoid affecting classrooms that really there is no meat on the bones anymore. It's pretty much gone. So those override dollars do continue to support some of those very important programs that we offer our students in the Cottonwood Oak Creek School District and the Mingus Union High School District.
I want to back you up a little bit. You said hooks. What do you mean by that? What specifically might be an example?
At a high school, I'll let Paul talk about high school, but I know a couple of the kids at the high school level are very much hooked by both art and drama.
Right. We have very strong fine arts programs and athletics. Some of those things, keep kids in schools. They also, we get a lot of scholarship money for our students. They receive, I don't have the statistics, but it's a significant amount of money in scholarships, and a lot of that is through fine arts and athletics, in addition to high rigorous academics. So beyond the core, those things keep kids interested in school and help them excel academically.
And I think sometimes, and we have had this conversation before, and I've had this with other educators, that those are the things that get cut first, almost no matter what district or what situation you're talking about. And I just wonder if sometimes the importance of those programs gets kind of set aside because of the drive toward academic achievement.
Right.
We need to prepare kids for jobs. That's our job. That's your job. That's the teacher's jobs. And that those other things, arts and athletics and those things, kind of get not thrown out, but set aside as not having, a proportionate importance to the others.
It comes down to how do you define a comprehensive education? We're measured and publicly, graded based on aims, a single metric, a test.
Right.
And that's not really representative of a comprehensive education, and really what I think is part of the foundation of the American education system. Preparing citizens, preparing everybody to be successful in different ways, and you can't look just at core 4 core subject areas and say that's comprehensive.
And I'd like to...
I need to stop you
yeah,
for
I know
just a
you do,
second.
and we'll come back.
Your chance comes after the break. There's plenty more to talk about. Our time will be short today. I know that you're doing a number of presentations and different kinds of things like that. So before we wrap up, if there are any more of those between now and the election, we'll maybe let the listeners know they can come and get in touch with these folks and ask these questions. It's a big vote. It comes up on November 5th. The ballots will be mailed on the 14th of October. Barbara Uren, Paul Tighe, our guests. We'll be back right after this.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We're going to beat them and bust them.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y.
Take time to be a dad today. Call or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
We welcome you back to the program. It is a little today, so I apologize to our listeners and viewers for that. Barbara Uren is the superintendent of the Cottonwood Oak Creek School District, and Paul Tighe, Mingus Union High School superintendent. I cut you off before the program, or before the break. Go ahead. You were going to say.
That's okay. He started talking about the arts, the music, the drama. I want to say just a little bit more about that, and then some of the other programs that the override does help support. But at the elementary level, one of the things that we know is our district is about 73% are low-income children. When you think about that, that's a great percentage of the children who may not have had opportunities that children from a higher economic standard would. So, for instance, they've not been involved in the arts. They've not been involved in piano lessons. They've not been involved in seeing visual arts. So a lot of those things, they've not had the same experiences that other children do. So in many ways, the arts, the drama, the music, those are equalizers for kids. It helps put kids on the same playing field. The arts and the music they're a language process. And what we know is that's the left side of the brain, and that's what the research is really showing. And it helps children acquire the language and helps them, actually brings up their IQ. If they've had about a year's worth of music, the research shows that brings up the IQ about 3 points. So significant difference in children that are exposed to many types of education, and that is definitely a part of education. Music alone is done on notes, mathematical equations, fractions. That's brought into the classroom. The other programs that the override supports are nursing. We used to have nurses at all of our campuses. Now we have a district nurse, and we have health aides at our campuses. So we had to reduce the services there. The override still helps support that nursing program that we offer our students. counseling. We used to have 3 counselors, full-time counselors.
Right.
Now we have just over 1 full-time counselor. Again, overrides help support those programs.
Let me ask you something. As you were talking about that, it kind of occurs to me, if those kinds of programs that you mentioned, those kinds meaning arts, music, even athletics,
yes,
if those were thrown out,
physical education.
if those were thrown out, done, those kinds of programs were done, would the districts be able to work within the budget and not need an override right now? And I know you don't have the figures right in front of you.
Well, yeah, I would say that would have, those programs would have to be reduced significantly.
Right.
Eliminated or
to
reduced.
the point of not being effective, perhaps.
And class sizes.
Yes,
We've been able to
class
maintain
sizes
reasonable, for Arizona, reasonable class sizes. The overrides provide almost $1 million annually to Cottonwood Oak Creek and $600,000 to Mingus, and that's all for like 2 cups of coffee.
Yeah.
It's
What I'm getting
$5.50 a month.
what I'm getting at is it occurred to me as you were talking that in a very kind of broad and general sense that this override for both districts is kind of sort of a referendum on this kind of rounded education and maintaining those programs you just described, music, art, athletics, and those kinds of things. Maybe that's oversimplifying it, but it almost seems to me that you're asking voters, what kind of an education do you want our children of our districts
I would have to agree with you with that.
to have? And so,
yes,
I mean, in a very broad sense, I know it's not cut and dried, but is that fair to say?
I think that is
That's
very
a fair
fair
generalization.
To say. Yes, it is.
Okay, I want to ask, if you've kind of already said it in the way you've talked about these other things. My question was going to be, if this override does not pass, what are we going to see go away? And I don't mean program by program, but I think you've already kind of answered that in the sense that some of these things are going to be either eliminated or dramatically cut back. What kind of feedback are you getting from the public? 'Cause you've done some presentations.
We have done quite a few, and
Many to come, too.
it has been, to me, it's kind of that magical pivotal moment where I think the community is saying, we are responsible for the children in our community, and we're willing to step up to that. That's just been the presentations, and the presentations that we've provided, I think the support has been
It's been great.
phenomenal.
We've heard some comments even yesterday. We need to get some of the legislators in here so they can hear what we think of, the choices they've made to cut education.
Now we got us a show, Paul.
Yeah.
I asked you this earlier about kind of kicking the can back toward the state, and is it oversimplifying it again there to say that if I don't want to say do your jobs because there's people certainly times have been tough. Everybody knows that, but I can't help but wonder if the districts. Or maybe if that's not the way to do it, if the districts wouldn't have kind of an easier time to swim these waters if the folks at the Capitol were kind of looking at things in a different way. Now, on the other side of that, people say, well, what are you going to do? Just throw money at it, throw money at it. And that's not right either. So is striking a balance down there and up here?
I mean, it's really easy to blame the legislature.
Yeah.
And, they cut taxes and, cut spending through the recession. And so one of the problems is, if you reduce revenue, you're having a harder time to fund programs that were in place. And so that's one of the side effects now is the state revenues are up, but that's after cutting taxes. They have a lot of constituents, and I'm not trying to necessarily defend them. It's easy to blame, but the primary revenue source for the state is sales tax, which is very volatile. It's not a stable tax base. So you're going to be up and down with the economy when you focus highly on a volatile tax. So
do we need to take a look? There's a lot of talk out there nationally, reform this and reform that and so on. Education reform in our state, is that something that really somebody you would like to see grab the bull by the horns? And
is that a funding reform? Or?
Well, I think
because we've been faced with a lot of reforms in the last 10 years, just reform after reform.
Right. Okay, so yes, a funding reform, I guess.
We live reform.
But it just seems like we have these kinds of conversations so often and maybe too often, and I don't know what the solution is.
I think
I know that
Paul nailed it when he talked about that volatile way that we fund education in our state, and that's what happened when we hit that big decline in our funding, is that our housing crashed, And construction used to be the main driving force of taxes.
Right.
And that crashed. So we are really at the mercy of what those taxes are. And that probably is not the best way to fund education and to make sure that all children, regardless of where you live, are provided a world-class education.
All right, we got to take another short break. When we come back, we'll tell you where you can find more information about these issues that we're talking about. Paul Tighe and Barbara Uren, our guests on Countywide today. We're back right after this.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We're gonna beat them and bust them.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y.
Take time to be a dad today. Call or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
Welcome back to the program. It's Countywide, and today talking about the budget override questions coming before voters for the Cottonwood, Oak Creek, and Mingus Union High School districts. And our guests, superintendents of those districts, Barbara Uren and Dr. Paul Tighe. I don't know. I'm on the fence. I've got kids in the districts. I don't have kids in the districts. This neighbor says yes. This neighbor says vote no. How do I kind of sort through beyond what Countywide just told me? Can I contact the district? Websites, what's the best way to get informed?
We would encourage you two different ways. First of all, get on the phone, come in, we'll sit down, we'll talk to you individually, we'll give you the facts. We just want to inform voters. We cannot give you anything else but the facts, but certainly our books are open. You can ask us any question. Our business managers are available to answer questions as well, so you can have a better understanding of how those dollars are utilized. Dollars from overrides go specifically to student programs.
Okay.
And certainly if there are organizations that would like us to come together, we're very happy to come. That can easily be arranged. Call either district office and we'll get it scheduled.
Make a presentation.
Sure.
Okay. Look online. I regret, I'm sorry, I don't have the websites right here. Our TV viewers have them. Ryan has been putting them up through the show. Google Mingus Union High School. Google Cottonwood Oak Creek School District. You'll get there. You'll find the school's websites and get all that information. Guys, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Good talking to you. We'll
Always.
do a shared services program after we get through the election and have that done. We'll talk more about that. We thank you for joining us. It's Countywide, and we'll see you next time.
This has been Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Listen in each Tuesday and Thursday as we tackle the hot topics and talk to the decision makers across Yavapai County. That's Countywide with Brad Miller and Paul David each Tuesday and Thursday on this Yavapai Broadcasting station.